There are moments in history so unbelievable that if you heard them as fiction, you'd call them bad writing. But this one actually happened. A man was convicted of murder, sentenced to die, taken to his execution, the switch was pulled. And yet, he didn't die. What followed wasn't just survival. It became something far more disturbing. Because sometimes, surviving your own death sentence is not the miracle people think it is. This is the story of the man who lived through his execution. And what happened next? Our story begins in the early 1900s in the United States, a time when executions were public, brutal, and meant to be final. The man at the center of it all was named Willie Francis. He was just 16 years old when everything started to fall apart. Willie was a poor black teenager living in Louisiana during the Jim Crow era. Opportunities were limited, justice was not exactly just, and accusations could easily become convictions. One day, a local store owner was murdered during a robbery. Suspicion quickly fell on Willie. There wasn't much physical evidence, no modern forensics, no DNA, just witness statements, pressure from authorities, and a system that often didn't care much about the details when the suspect was young, poor, and black. Willie was arrested, and soon after, he confessed. But later, he would claim that confession wasn't really a confession at all. He said it was coerced, forced under pressure, extracted while he was frightened and confused. It didn't matter. In 1944, Willie Francis was convicted of murder and sentenced to death by electric chair. He was 17 years old. On May 3, 1946, Willie was led into the execution chamber at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, also known as Angola Prison. Witnesses described him as visibly terrified, but composed. He reportedly said his final words were something like, "I am ready to go. I'm not afraid to die." Then he was strapped into the electric chair. A mask was placed over his face, straps tightened across his chest, arms and legs. Electrodes were attached. The executioner pulled the switch, but something went wrong. Instead of a clean, immediate death, Willie began to scream. The chair was supposed to deliver a lethal surge of electricity designed to stop the heart instantly. But the equipment malfunctioned. Witnesses said smoke filled the chamber. The smell of burning flesh became overwhelming. Willie's body jerked violently, but he did not die. The executioners stopped the procedure, and in a moment that stunned everyone present, Willie Francis was still alive. Barely. Now, here's where things get even stranger. Most people assume that if an execution fails, the sentence is over. But the state of Louisiana disagreed. They fixed the chair and scheduled him for another execution. Willie's attorneys immediately intervened, arguing something unprecedented, that a second execution would violate the Constitution's protection against cruel and unusual punishment. Think about that for a moment. The argument wasn't just that he shouldn't be executed again. It was that surviving an execution made a second attempt legally and morally different. The case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in 1947, the court ruled against Willie. The reasoning was chilling in its simplicity. The execution attempt had failed, yes, but it was not considered unconstitutional to try again. One of the dissenting justices, however, warned that the decision meant the state could essentially keep trying until death finally worked. For Willie Francis. The countdown restarted. Willie was returned to death row. But something had changed. The first attempt had broken something, not just physically, but mentally. Guards reported that Willie became quieter, withdrawn. He understood now what the chair actually felt like. Before the second execution, he reportedly said, "I'm ready. I just want it over." On May 9, 1947, almost exactly 1 year after the first failed attempt, Willie was once again led into the execution chamber. Same chair, same room, same machine. This time, there was no malfunction. When the switch was pulled, the electricity worked as intended. Willie Francis died at the age of 18. Legally, the case was closed, but ethically, it never really ended, because Willie Francis became something rare in legal history, a man who survived his own execution. For a full year, he existed in a strange limbo, too alive to be dead, but already sentenced as if he wasn't alive at all. His case raised uncomfortable questions that still echo today. What does justice mean when the system fails mid-action? If an execution attempt fails, has punishment already been fulfilled? Or does it simply continue? And perhaps the most disturbing question of all, is survival in that moment a blessing? Or just an extension of suffering? It's easy to turn Willie Francis into a legal case, a Supreme Court citation, a historical footnote. But behind all of it was a teenager, 17 years old. He didn't live long enough to grow into adulthood. He didn't get a second chance at life outside prison. He didn't get freedom after surviving something most people can't even imagine. He got 1 extra year, spent on death row, waiting for the machine that had already failed once. There are stories where someone escapes death and goes on to live a long, full life. This is not one of those stories. Willie Francis survived his own execution, and for a brief moment in history, the law had to confront something it was never built to handle. What do you do when punishment doesn't finish its job? In Willie's case, the answer was simple. You try again and hope it works. So the next time you hear about failed executions or system errors, remember this story. Because sometimes the most haunting part isn't that the system fails. It's that it doesn't stop when it does. It just tries again